Okay, good morning everybody. My name is Litrik. I'm an independent ICT consultant, I'm a freelancer. And I will talk a little bit about some augmented reality tests that I've been doing. There is a product, an app called Leia that is available on Android and on iPhone that shows augmented reality information, and I developed one layer of information for that tool. And I'll explain to you how I did that and how you can develop your own augmented reality information on your mobile device. Let's see if this works. Cool. Okay, I'm not sure is everybody familiar with the term augmented reality? Basically what it means is, and the way they describe it on their website, on the Leia website, is basically what happens is that they show real-time information on top of the real world. And they use a mobile device to do that. They use the camera of the mobile device, and they pull in live information from the internet and show that on top of the image on the camera. For example, in this screenshot here, you can see that the user is pointing his camera to a specific location, and the Leia app puts extra information on top of that image where the user can interact with that information. Okay, it's working. So there's this Leia reality browser, they call it. It's an app that's available for Android and recently has been made available for iPhone. It requires a smartphone that has a GPS because the application needs to know where you are. The smartphone also needs a compass because it needs to know where you are looking at, in what direction you are looking. It needs a camera so that it can really show the information on top of the real life image. And of course you need an internet connection because it will pull in live data from the internet depending on where you are and where you are pointing your device at. As I said, it's available for Android and for iPhone. And the nice thing about this Leia application is that you are not limited to the information that they make available. Third-party developers can create their own layers of information and make it available in the client applications, which means that you don't need to, if you want to provide augmented reality to your users, you don't need to develop the whole client application. You can simply plug into this Leia application and just provide your added value, meaning your information in their client. Worldwide, there are hundreds of layers available. In Belgium, I could find only 4 layers with information specific to Belgium. Of course, there are a number of layers that are available worldwide with information worldwide, but I could find only 4 layers specific to Belgium. And one of them is actually mine. Okay, what are the steps to create a layer? There are a couple of steps involved. First, you'll need to define your layer so that it shows up in the Leia client. Then you need to develop your layer. You'll need to do some programming. Then there are specific tools to test your layer. There's a specific test environment that you can use. And then finally, you need to publish your layer to make it actually available to everybody who has the Leia client application installed on his device. Quick question in the audience: who is a developer? Not me, so didn't get completely invaded by marketing people. So, step 1: define your layer. Basically, you do that on the Leia development side. You have to create a developer account. You create a new layer where you have to provide some metadata about the layer that you're creating. For example, the layer that I've created is one that shows the different fietsknooppunten in Flanders. So all the bicycle roads at the intersection, they all have a number, and they have, of course, a geographical location. And I'm creating a layer that shows that information in the Leia browser. So you have to provide a title, an icon, some colors, a description, which is all very nice for your branding, so that you can use your own colors and your own artwork to personalize the layer a little bit so that it fits your brand. Then you have to specify in which country you're providing information. Either in the earliest versions, you had to either pick worldwide or you had to pick one specific country. Now in the more recent versions, there's a little Google map where you can draw rectangles to indicate I have information for this specific area. They do that to avoid that if you're in Belgium and you ask, hey, I want to look up some information augmented reality, that it's going to show you layers with information that's only available in Spain, for example. And then you also need to provide a URL. That is, of course, the key is at that URL, you will have your code running that will have to respond to the requests coming from the layer client. So basically, you point to your web application, whose responsibility it is to return the results depending on some input provided by the layer client. Okay, so I decided to create a layer with fietsknooppunten. It was a little hobby project that I did. I wanted to try out the layer API. The problem is you need data to show. And unfortunately, we don't have any government organizations that provide open data like they do in the UK and in the US. So I went looking for some databases with some geographical data that I could use. And I stumbled across this nice website from fietsnet.be, which is a website which has a database of all the fietsknooppunten in Flanders and also in parts of the Netherlands. And they make that available as a CSV file for download. So I asked these guys, hey, would you mind if I create a mobile application based on your data? They said, no, that's okay, we don't have any plans to do that. Feel free and go ahead. So if you're into cycling, that's a nice site. So I'm pulling data from their site. So then I need to actually develop my layer, I need to program something, because the URL that I provided in that first step, I'll have to deploy a web application there. Fortunately, the API that you need to implement is very, very simple. It's one REST API that you need to implement, and it's called Get Points of Interest. It's described in their developer documentation. What happens is on that URL, you will receive a number of input parameters. Basically, it's the latitude and longitude, which is the position where the user is right now. It will also give you an indication of the accuracy of that position, because depending on the quality of the signal, the position might not be very correct. And it will also give you as an input parameter the radius, because the user in his client can indicate, what is the radius of information I want to see. Is it 100 meters, is it a kilometer, is it 5 kilometers? So you get that information. There are some extra fields as well, but those are the most important ones. And then in the response, your web application is supposed to return a list of points of interest in a JSON structure. And each point of interest has a number of fields. Again, the most important one is latitude, longitude, to indicate where that point is. You're supposed to calculate the distance between that point and the position of the user. You can also send or point to an image that you want to use for that point, to a label, some text that describes it, and a list of actions that you want to associate with that point of interest. And the nice thing about those actions is that people can then, in their layout client, they can interact with the point, and they can say, for example, look, there's an action, a mail to URL associated, so when they click on the point, they can indicate, I want to send an email to this. So if you're walking around in a city and you see restaurants, for example, you could very quickly send an email or make a phone call to make a reservation, for example. Step 3 is to test your layer, because that's not going to work from the first time. Because of course, the tricky part, even though there's only one REST API that you need to implement, the tricky part, of course, is to get the math right that goes from the position of the user and the position that you have of all your points in the database, calculate the distances and return the correct results. So the people from Layer on the developer side have created an API test page that you